of the ways that with tears have been watered, we have come, treading through the path of the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of the white star has cast. The words of James Weldon Johnson, the first Black executive secretary for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I bring you greetings on behalf of the nation's oldest Black Bar Association and the Young Lawyers Division, the National Bar Association, where I am humbled and honored to serve as the 33rd chairman of that august committee and division. Thank you to Evangeline Mitchell for inviting us once again to bring you greetings here today. I want to especially thank my mentee, Sharina Clark from Suffolk University, for being here and representing her university. My sister friend from the greatest college that I know, South Carolina State University, Brianna Booker Maxwell, for being here and going to be a next social engineer. And I also want to thank my friend and my former president of the Student Government Association, Fred Willis of the South Carolina State University, for coming and being here with us today. So why are we here today? We're here because, as many of my colleagues have said, you are needed, that Charles Hamilton Houston thought of you when he said that a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite on society. And you are the social engineers that we need. Not only that we need, but that we demand in this time and space today. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. Everybody else got to tell their story, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I am the first in my family to be a lawyer. I am a native of Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the mighty Wolverines. I didn't go to the University of Michigan, my mama did, but she doesn't claim it because she went to Michigan State. That's another story for another day. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Everybody 5 years old, they're going to be a pediatrician or something to that effect. So all through high school, all through college, until about my third year, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I was a nursing major. Any nurses in the house? Anyone? Any nurses? Okay. I was a nursing major at South Carolina State. But what I also was is the president of the college chapter at South Carolina State University for the NAACP. I had the great fortune of traveling all across the South, and I'm a Midwestern girl, so some things that we did not learn because our educational system doesn't really want to teach us the real history about what's happened in this nation, I had to learn as a 19, 20, 21-year-old person. So I traveled to the 16th Street Baptist Church and met Fred Shuttlesworth and saw the missing stained glass window in Birmingham, where 4 young girls wanted to just do their hair and get ready for Sunday school and were blown to bits. I went to the Lorraine Hotel, which now is the National Civil Rights Museum, where Dr. King was gazing out and a bullet hit him in the side of the neck. And I looked at the concrete that is still bloodstained. I came here to Atlanta and went up the street on Auburn Avenue and saw the house where he grew up. I saw the King Center. I met with some of his family. I met Merle Evers Williams, the widow, at 30 years old. 30. Of Medgar Wiley Evers, the field secretary for the NAACP in Mississippi, who thought it not robbery to register his folks to vote in Mississippi, who felt the need to ensure that folks were able to exercise their constitutional right to vote in Mississippi. And for that, one night after he was going to a meeting in Mississippi, someone snuck in between the bushes and shot him dead in his driveway. I attended the school where the Orangeburg massacre took place, where 3 college students and a high school student in Orangeburg, South Carolina, thought it not robbery to be able to integrate the bowling alley that was down the street from our school, that they walked to the school and protested in 1968, the fact that they were unable to go to this bowling alley. And after the 3rd night of protesting, the state troopers of South Carolina decided that they were going to roll up on those students and throw bullets in the air, killing 3 of them. But the interesting thing about one of those students, though, is that he went to the hospital alive. But because it was a segregated hospital, the white doctors and nurses would not treat him. And he did not have a place to go, and he died at the hospital. That was my education at South Carolina State University, and the reason that I changed my idea of how I could effectuate change. Instead of being a doctor, I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. But because I decided I didn't really want to be on the 5-year plan, no shade, but I had to pay my way through school and there was no 5-year plan for me, I graduated with my nursing degree and headed to Tennessee to become a nurse. But that burning desire that I wanted to still go to law school was still there. The knowledge that I really wanted to make a difference for our nation, for our people, was still there. And so I had a really nice job. I was getting paid $50 an hour and hey somebody. But I told my mama, I said, I'm going to law school. She's like, girl, but you just bought a house and yeah, but I'm going to law school because I know there is a place for me there. I know that this is what I was called to do. This is how I can make my mark. And so I took the LSAT again. I was a nurse. I had a 12-hour day. I went to study I took a class, an LSAT class for 4 hours. Then I went home to study what I just learned for 4 hours. That's 16 hours right there, just in case you're checking. And then I went to sleep so I can get back up and go back to the hospital the next day. And I passed, and I took the LSAT, I got an okay score. And I applied to only social justice conscious law schools, except UDC. I'm so very sorry. Next time. And I was committed because I knew, as so many of my colleagues have said today, I knew what my purpose was to go to law school. I knew what I wanted to do in law school. Everybody does it, and that's okay if you don't. But I knew. And so I applied to Ohio State, even though I was an Ann Arbor native, and you know, anything about college football, you know that is not allowed. I applied to all these other schools across the country. But I had a very interesting conversation one day with the Dean of Admissions of Howard University School of Law, who just happened to be a graduate of South Carolina State University, that I wanted to go to school. He was like, well, okay, well, I have a school for you. I'm like, okay, well, I'm still waiting for my application to be accepted, sir. He was like, well, let's talk about it. I stand before you now, 7 years later, a graduate of Howard University School of Law. You can't make these things up. Everything does come together. Mm-hmm. While I was in law school, I had the great fortune of interning at the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division, where all these cases where we're talking about the Department of Justice needs to investigate the police. I was in that department. I was in that section of the Civil Rights Division where they do that. I got to intern at the NAACP. Never thought I wanted to work at the NAACP. I was always the one that was like, I don't want to be at the national office. All of my colleagues in college like, I want to work for the NAACP in the national office. Like, I don't. See how that turned out. I got to intern at other places across DC that shaped and molded. But one thing that I will never forget is that in 2012, February of 2012, which for me was going to be an exciting time because I was about to turn 30. I don't look 30, do I?
No.
I'm 34, but that's fine. 2012, a young man decided that he wanted to go get some Skittles and get some iced tea for him and his brother and walk back home. And on his way back home, he was confronted by someone who thought that he did not need to be there. He didn't know who he was. And so he shot him, and then later said he was fighting and needed to self-defend. You all know that man is Trayvon Martin, young man is Trayvon Martin. And my dean at the time, Kurt Smoke, thought it not robbery to give us money out of his own pocket to send us down to Florida to participate in a march and a rally on behalf of that young man and young men across the country and young women across the country who have that same kind of issue going on, that we're not supposed to be in this place. Someone's trying to push us out of this place. Someone is going to take our life because our car stopped in the middle of the street, or we were sitting in the car with a book, or I decided that I wanted to still smoke my cigarette in my car as you were trying to give me a ticket, or the countless other ways where people of color are being shot dead in the streets for nothing. So I find myself here today as a double alumna of an HBCU talking to you about this because I'm saying to you, one, you are here for a purpose. And be clear, we do need you, but we need you focused and ready to go. In my office, I am traveling across the country trying to teach folks about their right to vote and what they need to participate in this franchise this year with this crazy election that we're having this year. But every election cycle is just as important as this one. But we need you to help defend our right to vote. Because until the Congress decides it necessary to restore Section 4B that was stripped in the Shelby County versus Holder decision, we need people like you to help us in the courts defend the folks' right to vote, to defend our branches and our youth councils and college chapters and state conferences across the country when they have to fight because someone decided that they wanted to put a polling place in a sheriff's department. As if they don't know the history in Georgia and people in the police and black people and the intimidation that we have dealt with for eons and eons and eons. Or because they wanted to create a voter ID bill that had been twice declared by the Department of Justice and a federal court in DC that was discriminatory. But as soon as the Supreme Court made their decision in Shelby County, the state of Texas decided that, okay, well now that you don't have to pre-clear it, I'm gonna go ahead and put it into place. I already know it's discriminatory, but I'm gonna put it in place anyway, because I can. Or the countless other ways they have tried to stifle black and brown people in this country from exercising their fundamental right to vote. Or we could just talk about what's going on in my local state of Michigan, where children and parents cannot drink the water that comes out their tap. They cannot bathe in the water because it makes their skin turn into rash. They cannot brush their teeth that we did, hopefully, this morning and took it for granted. Basic stuff. But we need you, people of conscience, people who are steeped in the tradition of HBCUs, because there is none like you all. We know what it means to stand in long lines, to fight with financial aid, to figure out if we can get housing. Okay. But what did that do to you? That gave you a resolve. That told you that you can't give up. That told you you cannot quit. that told you that no matter what it takes, I'm going to get my end result. That is what we need in lawyers. That is what we need, no matter where you go, because everybody can't work at the NAACP like me. I wish, but you can't. So no matter where your career takes you, we need you to be in those courtrooms, in those boardrooms, in those meeting spaces when they're talking about how do we fix the law to save money in this city that is predominantly poor, predominantly black. Well, we need to do it in a way so it does not poison a whole city and children. That's how. Mm-hmm. We're trying to figure out how we can change the law so that we can make sure that people can vote. Well, we need to do it in a way so that it does not discriminate against people and young people and old people and black people and brown people. We need you all to be in those spaces. But if we only have 7% of the lawyers in this country that are black, and 2.5% of them are black women, ladies, it's a little bit difficult for us to do all the work that we need to do. So my charge to you is this. When you take the LSAT tomorrow, think of all of the mothers across the country who have had to bury their sons and daughters recently. Mm-hmm. Think of the mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers in Flint who have beautiful, bright young children who may have wanted to go to law school, but now that they have been poisoned with water with lead for the last 18 months, may not be able to do that because of how that lead has gotten into their system and gotten into their brain, and they may not be able to do all that God created them to do. Think about them. Think about the people who came here, not of their own free will, who toiled in fields that they were not able to then sell the crops of. Think about the people who were chained and beaten because they wanted to keep their spirit and keep their name, and people wanted to contort them into who they felt that they should be. Think about Juanita Jackson Mitchell, who was the first African-American woman to be barred in the state of Maryland, who did amazing things, but could never have done the things that you have the ability to do. Think about Fred Gray, who's still living, still working as a lawyer in Alabama, who was a lawyer for Dr. King and Rosa Parks in Alabama. For every Dorothy Height, there was a Frankie Muse Freeman. We need you. You do not have the luxury to be average. You must be great. And so when you pass the bar and become a member of the National Bar Association, I look forward to seeing you and counting you as colleagues. Thank you so much for inviting us here today. And if you ever should want to get in contact with me, you can tweet me at Craine, Craine. You can email me at kcraine@naacpnet.org or chair@nbayld.org. May God bless and keep you all. Thank you so much.